Kiri, where did you go wrong? Well, to be fair, I know exactly where Kiri went wrong. There are several things about this drama series that I thought was absolutely abysmal, and there are some things about it that they completely got wrong. It's not the worst received series ever. There are some people who love it, but certainly there are a lot of negative things about this. Having said that, it did win the BAFTA Cymru Award for Best Director of Fiction in 2018. One of the episodes was directed by Euros Lyn, who is obviously fantastic. But as a whole, this series is appalling, and it had so much potential. I watched this for Sarah Lancashire, and I love her, and her performance was brilliant. She plays Miriam, who is a social worker, and she's feeling a lot of guilt because of something that's happened, and I'll tell you an abridged version of the plot in a second. And her performance was great. You can see the guilt she feels. You can see a lot of stress and anxiety and a bit of anger as well. I think it's Sarah Lancashire. She's fantastic. I am maybe slightly biased, but I'm madly in love with her. But her performance was brilliant, and I have absolutely no complaints. And, you know, at the very least, credit where credit is due, Lancashire did a good job. The rest of the series, not at all. So the description from IMDb I will read, but I'm going to cut out one or two words because I feel like it spoils it. So if you haven't seen it, maybe avoid going to IMDb until you've watched it. A drama dealing with the abduction of a young black girl, soon to be adopted by her white foster family, and the trial of lies, blame, guilt, and notoriety, which follows. So, pretty self-explanatory. There's this young girl who is Miriam. Miriam is her social worker, and she is abducted soon before she becomes adopted by her white family. First of all, completely unbelievable. While it's not unheard of, children in the social care system in the UK will be fostered by a family of the same ethnicity or race or religious belief where possible. I refuse to believe that there was not a single family of the same ethnicity as this little girl available to foster her. And maybe there was, maybe there wasn't anybody available, but it just seems really unlikely. I know it happens, foster families are in a great shortage, there is not enough of them, but because it's such an unlikely situation, it feels weird that they've made it so prominent, and it seems like it's a false portrayal of the social care system. And that straight away meant that I didn't really trust anything else that the series did. Because if they get that wrong, or make it unbelievable, or don't make a big enough a deal about the fact that this is such an unusual thing, because normally they try and foster or adopt within the same ethnic or religious or race circles, then I just don't trust them, and I don't think they know what they're talking about, even if they do. Even if, I don't know the writers' backgrounds, I don't know how many social workers helped with the formation of this narrative, but even if they know what they're talking about, it doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like that's the case at all. So I thought that was absolutely pathetic. The concept, ignoring that, the concept that this girl in foster care has been abducted is interesting, and I do like that. And I did think it was quite gripping because it does tell that story in quite a fascinating way that it's not that predictable. There are aspects of it that would not, if you think that this is going this way, but actually the narrative takes it in a different direction, and it's not completely cliche or predictable. And credit where credit is due, that was interesting. The narrative took a few directions I wasn't expecting. I liked that. I will admit that. However, the way in which they told the narrative was so poor, so bad. So we have these flashback scenes, and to when this young girl is spending time with her birth family, and it's really not clear when these flashbacks are happening. There's no transition, and it took me a long time to work out that they were flashbacks and not where that girl was presently. And I found that very uncomfortable, and at least until I forced my mind to realise what was happening, I found it very difficult to engage with and hard to stay on top of and it was very unnatural, and just that going back and forth, the editing was very poorly done. That narrative structure does not work. It could have worked in the right hands, but when you're going to play with timelines, you have to get it right. Otherwise, you're going to ruin the entire narrative. And they basically did ruin the good aspects of the narrative by wedging in these flashbacks, this really abysmal analepsis that just does not work. Could have, but didn't. And that's one of the biggest issues I had with this, is that when they're telling this story, it's hard to feel emotionally involved when the way in which they're sharing the story is so jarring and uncomfortable and really amateur. And I found that to be a really uncomfortable thing to deal with. So where the narrative did have its benefits, completely overshadowed by the very poor editing and narrative structure. But Sarah Lancashire's in it, so it's not all bad. There's also a dog in it who made me cry several times just for being a dog. Claire Rushbrook is in it, I have to say. Claire Rushbrook is another benefit. I really like her. She was brilliant. So would I recommend watching it? Honestly, no, not at all. Usually with a show like this, even if it's not that great, if I think, for example, Sarah Lancashire is amazing, I'd say give it a watch because there are benefits. But the narrative is so poorly told, so horrifically structured, and it's so unbelievable that there's so many negative things wrong with this that it's not worth it. If you're a Sarah Lancashire fan, maybe try and watch her scenes and ignore the rest of it, because I think that's probably possible. Once you know the bare bones, this girl's been abducted, she's getting the blame for it, you can kind of watch her performance and understand the progression of her emotions and where she is, and ignore the rest of it, because it's not a good series at all. Completely messed it up. It could have been amazing, but you know, it's one of those things where it could have been absolutely sensational, and they messed it up. They completely ruined it. It's just, I'm heartbroken, and I hate saying that because Euros Lyn's a brilliant director, but you know, it didn't work. It could have done, it did not.